Alright, so right now I'm about to start some testing on this Monolith THX Ultra 13-inch subwoofer. Alright, so there it is. Let's try it first with the grill on. No, girls, don't go near the speaker while I'm testing. How's it going? This is Joe and Tell. Today, let's talk about the Monolith THX Ultra 13-inch subwoofer with 2,000 watts continuous and 3,800 watts peak. In other words, it's a freaking monster. So like Monolith's other subwoofers, this is THX certified. This particular one is certified for THX Ultra, which means it's good for 3,000 cubic feet. So if you have a room that's 20 by 17, that's a large room with 9-foot ceilings, that would come out to 3,060 cubic feet. Now my home theater is 20 feet by 20 feet with 9-foot ceilings, so that's 3,600 cubic feet. I find that this sub has no issues pressurizing this room, so I assume that their certification goes above and beyond. It also doesn't hurt to have multiple subwoofers, which I do have. As with their other subwoofers, this also applies DSP to flatten out the frequency response, make it easier to cross over with your main speakers, and also to extend out the frequency response. They also use HDF high density fiberboard, which is denser than medium density fiberboard, MDF, which is what most people use, which means that this thing is way heavier. So if you're planning on moving this thing around a lot, yeah, you might want to do some tricks like I did, taking off the feet and things like that. I remember the box saying that this is about 200 pounds. Whatever it is, it's heavy. So be careful, make sure you have somebody else who's helping you. If you do have to carry this or move it, don't try to do it yourself. This does have 3 ports, and so you have different tuning options. I don't really understand why you'd want to get an enclosure this large if you only wanted a sealed enclosure, but it's an option. This is a true 13-inch driver, no cheating here. The cone itself is made of a combination of pulp and fiberglass. On their website, they talk about how the driver has been optimized using the Clipple. They didn't just pick up any driver off of the manufacturing line. They actually wanted to make sure that they had the proper driver for this particular purpose. The peak-to-peak excursion is 90 millimeters, that's 3.5 inches, and that's how far the woofer can actually move from one end to the other. 3.5, that's a lot. All right, 16 hertz. All right. The way they're able to do that is this huge rubber surround that you see here. Wow, this thing is fat, thick, whatever you want to call it, it's huge. It looks beefy. Yeah, you can tell that they put some thought into making this driver. They do have different modes in the back that allow you to change the response of this and allow you to have a little bit more bass extension. You could either choose THX, which is a little bit more stringent as far as distortion goes, which means that they can't play it as loud or as low, but there is an option to choose extended, which is what I use, because I find that this speaker, this subwoofer, gets more than loud enough, so I'm not too worried about reaching those distortion limits. I prefer to have the extra bass extension that option provides. Now, one thing you're going to want to know about a sub like this is that the sound travels through walls. I mean, any good sub will do that, but something about this particular sub, I didn't think I was playing it that loud, but my wife was like, man, I can hear that up here. It's shaking stuff over here.
No time where that's appropriate in home. Like, it sounds like it belongs in a theater.
All right, so there you have it. That's your new tagline, Monolith, disrespecting your neighbors. Sounds familiar, but that's a new one. And I guess that's a good thing. Depends on what you like. I think it's a good thing. I'm happy. If you're an apartment, probably not the best thing. You don't want your neighbor hearing exactly what you're playing. So something to keep in mind. When it comes to THX specifications, they only say what size room they recommend, but they don't say exactly what it means to have that certification. So I believe that has something to do with the distortion levels, how loud the speaker can get, but also how low can it extend? Like, what's the lowest bass notes that it can actually produce? You don't want a subwoofer that only goes down to 40 hertz, I mean, your bookshelf speakers might be able to do something like that. So that's kind of useless. You want it to extend and fill out those spaces where maybe your bookshelf or floor standing speakers can't produce. One thing I'm happy to say is I think a lot of people are always concerned with a large driver, a large enclosure. They're thinking like, oh, maybe that's not going to be so musical. You know, don't worry about that, right? The speed of the woofer is not related to the size of the woofer. If you think about it like this, a 20 hertz signal requires the woofer to move at a certain speed, and a 100 hertz signal requires the woofer to move at a certain speed and start and stop at accurate times. So if it's able to produce higher frequencies, which subs are able to do, 200 hertz, etc., that means it's able to start and stop and overcome inertia. I wouldn't worry about that. I think that's kind of one of those myths that people have. And I think it has something to do with the fact that when you hear extremely low bass, sometimes people aren't really used to that. Or maybe they're talking about room modes, or they might be talking about boominess that's caused by the room, but you need to separate those two out. This is neither of those. It's not boomy. It just produces nice clean bass, but you still will probably have to use some sort of room correction to accommodate your particular room. In my case, I'm using Dirac. I find that it does a great job blending it with my other speakers and just sounding seamless, and it sounds great. So let me kind of give you my experience with this. At first, what I did was I was running some test tones through it, playing some bass tests, and it didn't sound that loud to me, but I did notice that stuff was shaking. A lot of times subs will make all kinds of noise, port chuffing and this and that, making all kinds of racket just to produce some certain tones, and that might make it seem like it's loud, but this is just playing it clean. As you can tell, the enclosure is quite large. This one was a ash finish. My buddy Youthman actually has a matte black finish, which I think looks pretty hot. I think they're planning on also coming out with a gloss finish. As far as controls on the back, it has the typical controls with the addition of the Balance XLR, which I'm always happy to see. If you're interested in seeing my unboxing, I'll leave a link to that down below. What this is missing that other subs might have is an app to allow you to control the PEQ, which I think would come in handy in case you're using it for, let's say, a 2-channel setup. But I think most people who are gonna buy this are not gonna use it for a 2-channel setup. You're gonna put it into a home theater setup, in which case your AVR already has that built into it. Although I would like to see it, I can understand that they would do that in order to pass the savings on to you, which they do. A lot of people want me to compare it with the SVS PB3000, and maybe even the PB4000 might be a better comparison. I haven't tried those. I have the SB3000, which is a small sealed enclosure, and this is way huger. And so what I've noticed is that it just plays louder and it plays deeper. That's not saying anything bad about the SVS, because for the size of this thing, I think it's a beast as well. Just know that those are some of the compromises you have to make if you want a smaller subwoofer. I don't think that this is gonna be a great subwoofer if you plan on integrating it with your living room situation. I already asked my wife if it would be okay to use it in the living room, just joking, because I don't really want it there either. And she's like, no.
Is that cool? Can we put that in the living room or no?
No.
Look at that thing.
As a coffee table, maybe.
But yeah, if you have a dedicated theater and you're able to maybe hide these away, or for me in my theater, I wouldn't mind seeing 2 of these on the side, because that's what it's made for. It's just a dedicated theater. Keep that in mind. If you're gonna be using this in a dedicated theater, just know they're big. Take some measurements. One little thing that I found was a little bit tricky is sometimes it takes a while for the auto on feature to catch the signal coming in from the RCA that I'm using. And so just make sure that your sub is receiving a signal and is turned on before you start running Odyssey or Dirac or other room correction, because what I've noticed is sometimes it's not on. So when it does that initial test, it's not actually taking that subwoofer into account. So again, make sure it's on. One way I ensure that is I just unplug the RCA a few times and it kind of like, it powers it on. So just a quick tip. Now I've also reviewed the Monolith THX 10 and people want to know how does it compare to something like that. And you can see size wise, it's way huger. It actually doesn't have that beveled straight corner. It has a rounded corner. So that's the one thing that's different. But other than that, you can definitely tell that this is way bigger. It plays louder and deeper with less distortion. But in my particular case, I'm more than happy with the performance of the THX 10. That thing was digging down to 16 hertz in some scenarios in my room, and that's more than enough. I can turn that loud enough to get in trouble. So the point that I'm trying to convey to you is that you should know what to expect. Know that the THX 10, it's gonna shake some stuff. It's gonna do its thing. It digs deep, it plays loud enough, but this does play louder. Do you want that extra loudness? The one thing that you also have to remember is you might be able to turn your sub up louder, but you want that even with the rest of your speakers. So that's the other thing I want you to think about is, do you want to play the entire system louder? And can your other speakers handle that amount of power? Are they high sensitivity speakers? So just make sure that your entire system can keep up. If that's not a priority, then you may want to look at the 12 or the 10-inch version of this. I do need to mention that they also have a 16-inch version of this subwoofer that I have not checked out yet. I don't know if I want to. Hobie, please don't send me that one. This box was already huge. Yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be crazy. So let's take a quick look at the measurements that I did in room. I do want to say that James Larson at Audioholics did a great write-up and very detailed review of this speaker. He did do CEA 2010 measurements outdoors, which is a test of how loud the subwoofer could go and also how low it can go with certain limits for distortion. So it can't be playing super low and super loud with all kinds of distortion. It has to play it cleanly, and he does some tests of that. So I try not to read other reviews, but I did look at some of the objective measurements, and what I did see was it seemed to perform about as well as the 15-inch version Monolith. So right here I have the original THX10, and as you can see in room I was getting response down to 16 Hertz. Very good. Here's the new THX13, and this is in the extended mode with all ports open, and you can see that I was getting into the 14 Hertz range with 2 ports open. Same thing. Let me take away this 10 for a second. You can just see that 3 ports, you can see the difference there versus the 2 ports here. Maybe a little bit more bass output here between what, 16 and 30 Hertz. You know, what we're looking for is more of a flat response here. So this is the 3-port extended compared to non-extended mode, the THX mode here. And you can see that this mode is more flat, but there's not as much bass extension here. Let's compare the 2-port modes. So extended 2-port versus THX 2-port. You can see, again, less extension. And then this is a mode with only 1 port open. And last, here's the mode with all of them sealed. And you can see that that has the least amount of bass response. Nothing to scoff at, but if you want the most bass extension, you're going to want to put it in the extended mode with 2 or 3 ports. So real quick, let's place it on the subwoofer leaderboard. Here we are at the subwoofer leaderboard. This comes in at $15.99, so best under 2,000 bucks. Is it better than KC62? I would have to say yes overall. This thing did some impressive stuff for the size, but based on overall output, what they say is there's no replacement for displacement, and that is true here. And that also goes for the best overall subwoofer. If you're talking about just straight up output, then this is going to be the winner. It's the largest one that I've reviewed, so boom. But that doesn't mean that any of these are not good, because these are great for the size and their price. All right, so there you have it. What do you need to know about this? This thing is huge. It plays low, it plays loud, it plays clean. It sounds great for music, movies. What else do you want to know? If you're interested in this, I'll leave a link down below. One thing I do have to say is Monolith is a channel sponsor, but I'm allowed to say whatever I want about their products, and they don't get to review the video before I release it to you guys. So let me know in the comments below, is this something that you're interested in? If so, how do you plan on moving this thing? I hope for your sake that there's no stairs. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. Take care. Bye-bye.